Recently we've had some really nice days for painting. We've had some really cold days, and we've had some days of really bad weather. Today is another one of the bad weather. So obviously I have to work around not being able to paint. And some of the parts that have been drying up here the last few days, they've dried out in the garage. And this keeps the smell in the house to a minimum whenever I can dry them out in the garage. But again, we only have so many days a year we can paint, and we try to take advantage of them, but it doesn't always work to our favor. And today's one of the days we will not be able to paint. Now, even on the FCR restoration, not being able to paint every day is just something I have to work around. So what I try to do, and it's good information for people that don't do production kind of work or they've never done production work, is you try to use the weather to your advantage. In other words, when it's a bright sunny day, you try to have something ready to paint. When it's a rainy day, you try to do work indoors. When it's a cold day, you want to be in the shop all day, not out in the garage. When it's warm, you can spend some time out in the garage, disassembling bikes or doing whatever. And the one thing you can do anytime is carbon fiber work. And today we're going to work on some carbon fiber stuff. Now I have a vision in my mind of how I want to do these kick plates. They're aluminum now, and I want to finalize how I want to do them. That's one of the parts I want to make out of carbon fiber. But I'm not going to do that one today. I'm going to do one of the ones that's a little bit easier. Now this piece right behind the windshield, it snaps right on and off. And it's kind of, well, in my mind I pictured I wanted to make it or just cover it with carbon fiber, laminate over it. That would be a nice easy thing, because then through the windshield will come the look of the carbon fiber. I wanted to keep this flat black if possible, so it would be like a border. It would have lead interest, and then it would make this look even shinier. So I had that picture in my mind. I wanted to think it through, and then I said, well, you know what I need to do? I need to look on Partzilla, make sure this part isn't $200, and it's relatively inexpensive. So even if I don't like it, I can go buy a part from Partzilla. Or if I don't like the look of the carbon fiber, I can just paint it shiny black. So I've got a lot of choices here, and I've got the best of all worlds. No matter how I do this, I'll like it at the end, and that's what I want. And I always try to explain to people how just painting or changing the look of one part, and I originally thought I was going to take this part, cover it with carbon fiber, and it would kind of look the way I had in mind, and when I laid it out, it looked better shiny black. So a lot of times, you never know until you actually do it and you actually see it in real life. Now the mufflers on the R1, when I made the mufflers, and I made a mold for these parts, I was not sure, because I had made a lot of two-cycle exhaust systems for model airplanes. I made hundreds of them, in fact, using similar material and Huntsman resin. And what happened with most of those, the two-cycle ones, they had a limited lifespan. They didn't last. Now, these are going on 9 years old already. And they still look pretty decent, I guess. And they have never been a problem. So I'm kind of happy the way that worked out. That was one of the good carbon fiber parts. I also made up these kick plates, and that's what we're going to try to make, something similar to that, maybe a little bit different shape, I don't know. But every time you make a carbon fiber part, it's like a building block. And you can see other parts you'd like to make, and something you'd like to add to the project, or something you'd like to change. You know, the FZR, I could have made those aluminum kick plates. That was one of the things. I just didn't have the time. Summer came and I wanted to ride the bike, but there are still parts, actually for every bike. They're all a work in progress. So while I'm out here, these two parts come right off with these Zeus fasteners, little nylon Zeus fasteners. Now, one of the things John Pothier and I are both trying to come up with is a substitute way of mounting the fairing, get rid of these mirror mounts. But you can see the problem is you really can't get your hand in there easily. And I don't want to make this any harder than it has to be, but John has already come up with some ideas for these, but I can picture in my mind, well, I can't really picture it that I'm happy with it yet. But anyway, you'd have to move all these instruments, and it's a big deal. But anyway, this is one of the easier parts, and it would be a good part for somebody, their first part that they're going to do carbon fiber with. This would probably be a good one. Now, one thing nice about making anything out of carbon fiber is it's as solid as a rock. These are parts that, this whole part is made out of solid carbon fiber, and when I did the finish on it, it takes the finish beautifully no matter what kind of finish you put on it. So these are the first two carbon fiber parts that I made for this restoration, and I'm not sure what else we're going to do, but I have some ideas. I'm thinking about remounting that front fairing somehow with John's help if he comes up with something. If I come up with something, if we don't, we'll put it back stock. So let me just go through this. It's a very easy thing to laminate any carbon fiber part. This has a couple of curves in it, so we're going to have to, the curves mean we're going to have to babysit it for some amount of time. It has little tabs that we're going to have to, at the end of it, grind the carbon fiber away so we can actually attach this with the tabs. That's not a big deal to do. So the first thing to look at the part and say, well, if the part had wax or grease or anything on it, think of what would happen. The part wouldn't stick. Well, we don't want that to happen. So the first thing we're going to do is do the normal cleanup, sand it, roughen it all up, radius all the edges off, and then we'll do our lamination. Now the lamination is going to be, and we've done this, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and we bought brand new resin, 105, 207, the clear hardener. What the clear hardener will mean is if we want to keep this part looking like a carbon fiber part, with that the look of clear carbon, this resin will be to our advantage. The other resin is a little cloudier. It just won't show as clearly. So this product, it mixes 3.7 to 1. Very easy to use. No smell in the house. And I guess you could drink it. No, you can drink it. Let Midgley drink it. That's the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to put newspaper on the table, prep up, cut some carbon fiber cloth. We got it from Dave and Dick Hewitt, and we're pretty much ready to go here. Now, from my scrap box, I thought I would show a couple of things because people want to know about carbon fiber. Well, carbon fiber comes a million different ways. This is a pattern called twill. And that's what we're going to be using. This is a scrap piece. What twill is able to do is go around corners. It maintains its edge. You can go around pieces. Very conveniently, it maintains its edge. Very nice. That's called twill. Now, if you're doing a lamination like this where you just want a coating of carbon fiber, there's no structure involved, you just use the thinnest carbon you can. If you're looking for structure, like when we make those things for the heel pads, we'll put several layers. Now, I just wanted to show some of the things people don't know about. Or maybe if you haven't worked with carbon fiber for many years, well, this is, one thread is carbon and one is Kevlar. Kevlar is very different than carbon, and usually the way it's defined very easily, let me get a piece of e-glass out. Everybody knows, I guess you can show what this is. This is e-glass. It's what they make boats out of, fiberglass, or old-fashioned motorcycle helmets. E-glass has a strength. Let's call this 1. Kevlar, let's get a piece of Kevlar out. Straight Kevlar is 3 times stronger than e-glass. When you mat it in with this, it gives certain properties that are better than carbon all by itself. But real carbon fiber, and I just have to find a nice piece to show for a demo. Well, we'll use this piece. This is 3 times stronger than Kevlar, so it's 9 times stronger than e-glass, relatively speaking. Now, when you make an aircraft part, of course, you want to get the weight of the cloth and the weight of the resin to be relatively equal. You want to vacuum bag it, autoclave it. You want to use a high-tech resin, probably an EPON resin. What? We don't need to do any of that. And if you're making a propeller for a model airplane, you better have the high-tech stuff. And you better know what the hell you're doing, too. So anyway, a part like this, we don't need to know what we're doing. So here's my point. You could do this part. The 105 resin is easy to use. It's really not as toxic as EPONs or any of the Huntsmans or anything. But what this allows you to do, let me just show another thing. Because I'm trying to show, this is how carbon fiber is sold too. It's called tow. And what you can do with tow is, you're looking to reinforce a part, you can wrap it like that, put resin in it. You can make little things. This is what we used to make the 2-cycle. Anybody that's a modeler is going to know what this is. It's like a Chinese necklace of carbon fiber that you wrap around a mandrel. It has to be post-cured, heat-cured. Well, the resin has to be heat-cured, post-cured, whatever. Here's the point. This is not an aircraft part. It's not a structural part. So I'm going to cut a piece, an appropriate piece. We only need one lamination. We're going to use the 107 and the 105. And I think if you watch how I do this, I don't think this would be out of the range of anybody being able to do it. Then when we're done putting a nice finish on it, whole nother job. That's pretty labor intensive. But doing the original part, and a lot of people like the look of that it's dull. I mean, I see a lot of parts for exotic motorcycles where they look like sandpaper, flat black or whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to share this information. People subscribing to my channel usually really want to know stuff. So I try to pass on what I know, which you can decide for yourself how valuable it is relative to what you're trying to do. Carbon fiber is not difficult to use. In fact, you know what the funniest thing is? I watched a YouTube video. There was a guy, and he was making parts for his office chair, laminating parts to make it look like he had a carbon fiber office chair. Now, I just bought an office chair. I got scraps. No, not doing it. Anyway, let's get into making this part. Now, here's a handy little thing when you're working with carbon fiber. No matter how you cut it or sand it or whatever, you don't really want to breathe the dust in. And I would say you should wear a mask whenever you sand it. And you don't want these fibers are not going to do you any good. And this thing is a very handy tool. So anytime you're going to do a lamination, you want the part to stick. That's pretty obvious. And to get it to stick, there's two things. You want to get off all the wax or grease or dirt. Now, with a part like this, you actually could put the carbon fiber on, peel the part up, and but you wouldn't have all the tabs and everything on it, and the interlocks. So this is just the easier of two ways to do it. In the end, this will be underneath the part. And it's an inexpensive enough part. So I would say if you're looking to do an easy carbon fiber project for your first project, look for a part like this on your motorcycle that's going to be easy to work on, easy to sand. And then when we go to put the finish on this, and again, I think it's going to be a relatively easy part to do. I'm going to try to show as much of it as I can in real time. Again, I know that people that are watching the channel really want to know stuff. And I know I don't like things with camera cuts that, my God, it makes me crazy. And they show a bunch of stuff that I don't care about. And also, I want to see how they did this, the XYZ, and then they skip over it. Anyway, I see another thing is little baby rubber things in here that I'm going to take off. Now, see, that little baby rubber, because that's going to make, I don't want to get carbon fiber on it. I don't want to get epoxy on it. So it's good I can get that off right now, and I'll save these just like anything else. I'll save them to put after the part is done. One of the things you have that, and most people that do this right to the last minute, they don't realize, oh, I have to have some way of holding this. Well, I always like to attach it to something that's heavy and stable so that I can work on this, because I'm going to be basically brushing resin and working on keeping these grooves nice and easy for some amount of time. So I'd like to have it level, not off to one side. So I'm trying to figure out right about in the middle is where I guess I have to have it. And a good way to do this, not the only way of course. Let's see if this is warm. It's not warm yet, but I'll wait till this heats up. Put a bead around here, drop that on, and then get it from the bottom, because I want this to be nice and stable. Having this mounted to something stable is a big part of getting the job, that you make it easy for yourself. Now, in a perfect world, we'd be able to get this part level, of course. Just anything to make it easier. Now, it doesn't really matter if you're making a motorcycle part, an airplane part, whatever you're making. It doesn't matter. Or an office chair part. And by the way, I always commend people that are willing to try something cool, something different. That's got to dry. Let's give it a minute to dry. We're set with this, and we're ready to cut the carbon material. Needless to say, if you're not going to make a lot of parts, you don't need a big roll like this. And thank you, Dave Midgley and Dick Hewitt, for supplying us over the years, many years, with, let's see how I want to do this. Do I want the grain? You never know. I'm just going to do it in a traditional way. And I guess it's not real. I don't know why I'm making this more critical than it has to be. Not real critical. And by the way, if you need a very tiny amount, you can usually get smaller amounts. Or if you're going to do a lot of work, over the years we've done a lot of work, you can buy a roll for $1 million, or you can buy these small amounts. Anyway, all through this, I want to maintain the weave. I don't want the weave to start turning into a bunch of drunk worms. To mention another thing, obviously carbon fiber can be costly, expensive, and you want to protect it. It's always a good idea to keep it rolled up on a roll. You never want to fold it. Even though if you buy stuff off eBay, they fold it for you. And then you've got a kink in the weave, sometimes, I guess, Anyway, but it's best if you store it on a roll covered with plastic, and otherwise it gets dusty and dirty, and there's really no way to vacuum it that I know of without disturbing the weave. So this is our baby. Now, I had thought one of the things is if this restoration goes quickly and I get to the end of it and have a month or two left before the riding season comes, I'd make an exhaust system like the R1. I'd make some kind of cool, tricky muffler, but I've got plenty of this, and I've got plenty of the high temperature resin. Now, of course, you have to decide if you want the weave to go on an angle, if you want the weave to go front to back. I think we'll just do it this way. And if you're doing your first part, it's a good idea to put some tape around the edge. It just keeps it from unraveling and threads coming up on, making you crazy. And then when you get to everything actually stuck down, you could just trim it off with some old scissors. And I think this is going to be fine. We've got plenty of an edge. Now, about mixing the resin. This resin is not a supercritical resin. There are resins like EPON where you measure in grain weights and in 68% to 42% or 1%. This is 3.7 to 1. It's kind of easy peasy, but it's still a good idea to be accurate about it. And it's a good idea to mix it in a glass jar, not in a plastic cup, and never stir it with wood. Wood pulls up on some resins. It pulls up some of the chemicals out of the kicker. So what happens is the catalyst. What happens is then your mix doesn't have enough of the catalyst in it. So to be safe, no matter what resin you're using, use a piece of steel or wood, not wood, aluminum or something to mix the resin. So this part is ready to go. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to go get the resin, mix up the resin. And you really don't want to mix more resin than you need, because what happens as the resin is in the pot, the bigger amount you make, the quicker it's going to kick off. So it's really not to your advantage to mix up a giant amount. So in our case, I think we're only going to need about 2 ounces. That'll be an easy amount to make. And a good thing to have on hand for doing this kind of lamination is an ordinary flux brush. You can buy for 15 cents. You buy 100 of them for a nominal amount of money. And always put a piece of tape on the edge, because they're razor blades and it'll cut right through your glove. Now what I have are these little mixing cups you can buy at the dollar store. I put an ink marker there where the amount that I think I'm going to need, it's 3.7 to 1. And again, this is not ultra critical. Any resin that's ultra critical, when they give it to you in little baby grain weights and half a percentage, it's a different thing. West resin is usually pretty friendly. And the nicest part about this whole resin system, there's really no stink at all. And that was the big selling feature for Karen. Now this one I've got to go just there. And I do basically do it by eyeball. So now what's really important, I got my flux brush with A little bit of tape because I've cut myself on the end of this and been bleeding all over the resin, and I want to get the last little bit out of here so I don't disturb the mix. I don't make it any more inaccurate than it is. You can do it by weight. You can read it on the side of the can by weight, by volume, by gefilte fish. You want to get the thing nice and tight. I always try to make them tight. Now, here's another trick, another thing for beginners. When you think you've got the resin mixed, mix it 2 minutes more. Nothing is going to make you crazier than if you lay up a part and that resin doesn't cure, or parts of it don't cure. Whatever time you spend mixing is cheap insurance. Also, the environment I'm working in now is about 65 degrees down here in the cellar in my workshop. I don't like it hot. I like to work in a flannel shirt. Because I go in and out of the house. I don't want to go from a hot house to a cold. I want to be as stable as I can be. So I try to keep the shop cool. And one of the side benefits is resin takes longer to kick off the cooler it is. So I don't want it to freeze, of course. I just want it to be, if I would be in a warm weather climate in a hot garage, say, and it's 80 degrees, this resin's going to kick off a lot quicker. Now, I'm going to shut the camera off because I'm going to stir this for another 2 minutes. I don't want to take any chance that when I'm all done with this, that I haven't, and I want to get around the edge of the cup, the edge of the glass, the whole thing. I don't want any part of this to be surprise. Okay, now some part of this might get boring, but there's 2 phases to this. We have a phase of about 45 minutes where this resin is going to stay at this temperature. It's going to stay totally liquidy. During this phase, I'll be able to just brush it on, brush it off, do anything I want. Then it's going to start to get tacky and gluey, and then I have to really be careful to press down all the corners and edges and angles and things that I want to do. And when I'm all done, I'm going to have to trim off the extra, and then I'm going to have to very carefully grind anything off of these tabs, because this is going to have to go back in with tabs, of course. So we got a little bit of patience is always in order. And again, if you're working on your first part, and I assume a lot of people are that would be watching this video or watching similar videos, and maybe even that guy that's doing office chair parts, at the end of it, I said, that's pretty cool. Now, what was good about the guy doing office chair parts, and if he's watching, I hope you're enjoying our video too, is he showed all his mistakes. Well, that's great, because if you knew what you were doing, you wouldn't be watching YouTube videos. You'd be working at Boeing or something. Anyway, so there you go. This I want to drop on nicely. And again, I want to make sure I got overage in every dimension. Now I want to start at the very middle, and I want to gently, I don't want that pattern to distort. So I want to gently just coat everything with resin. Again, this may get really boring. I don't know. We're going to find out. But when this part is done, we're going to put it up by the heat, let it dry overnight, and then we have to decide exactly what kind of finish we want to put on it. We can put our really shiny finish. We can put a dull satiny finish. We can make it look like, a fish scale or whatever. We have a lot of choices is what I'm trying to say. But now this part, I really want to make sure I soak every part of it. Gets soaked. That's number one. Now once I get to this part, again, your hands always get, and this is the thing, you can't scratch your ear or something if it starts to itch. Keep a box of gloves handy. I want to trim off as much of the overage as I think I can right now. It'll just make bending the part a little bit easier. Again, this is not critical. The part is absolutely in place now. And you don't want to do this ahead of time and make that you have 1/4 inch at the end of the part with no carbon fiber. That's definitely not going to be in your favor. So this is why you want the part mounted a nice solid way. Let's see where we have the edge. right about now. I hear people snoring and going to sleep and stuff, but hey, we do our best to try to pass on information. There's no other purpose here. Now, you can do this with your bare hands. You can feel the parts. I can feel that little ridge that I've got to work around. Now, as this resin starts to cure, it's going to get tackier and tackier. And when I do this, it's going to stay in place roughly 45 minutes from now. It's going to just stay right where I put it. Right now, it's moving around. So the first thing is just to get it set in position. And then we'll go have a cup of coffee or whatever. And we'll wait for it to start to get sticky. And when it does, we'll come back with our little trowel. I want to make sure I see, this is the thing, I don't want to get any extra pieces in my weave, because if I'm doing a structural part, I don't care about that. But on a part I want to be the cosmetic part of it, I don't want to have that. Anyway, now I'm just going to saturate this. That's all I can do until the resin starts to tack out. And that's usually a half hour to 45 minutes. Again, we've dedicated the whole day to doing this one part. And a good philosophy is if you're going to do a part for your motorcycle and you have some collector bike that you can't get parts for, not a great idea. You want to do a part that you can go on eBay or on, even better, on Partzilla. And if for some reason a part doesn't look like the way you envisioned it or something, you can just go get another part. In this case, not an expensive part, but when we're done with it, it may be a nice little focal point. It may add a nice dimension to how we want the bike to look. And this clear resin should make a really nice base for a finish. And because I haven't done this yet, with this resin, I haven't tried to make a clear part. So I don't know if it's going to be, this resin will give me what I want, or if I'm going to have to put the clear automotive finish over it. We'll see. Anyway, so we'll let this sit, basically half hour, 45 minutes. And it'll just get stickier and stickier and stickier, and then we can start working it down into the corners. Okay, I'm back, and it's about roughly 15 minutes since I let this sit, and it's not tacky yet, but it's getting there. So I want to scrape off gently. The word is gently here. Now, if you're trying to make this part, you want to speed up things, you could use a little heat. Problem is, if you overdo the heat, you make air bubbles. And then it's, when you're doing a cosmetic part, well, even if you're doing a structural part, that's not your best friend then. So right now, we're going to be really careful about just pressing this down. We got a little crease here. I have the imprint of where the Zeus fasteners go. Those little nylon Zeus fasteners. And so this is what I call babysitting. And babysitting is just, I can't go do something else. Actually, there was a day I was making a part. I don't remember what part. It was funny as could be. I had a fly in the shop, and he landed in my carbon fiber. I said, wow, that's an expensive fly swatter there. Anyway, this looks like it's going to be a nice part. Again, I always want to have, it's part of my philosophy of doing custom and restorations and different things. I always would like to be that when I'm done, if it doesn't match what I have in my mind, I want to be able to put it back without too much grief. I wouldn't want to take the last Benelli valve cover or something and try to do something and then find out I couldn't get another one reasonably. It's always good to check Partzilla, make sure they have the part in stock, no matter what it is. And then if all else fails, you at least can get another part. And this, because this shows through the windshield, it may really look nice having it in raw carbon fiber. But again, that's part of my whole philosophy of doing this, is if it doesn't look good, or what the worst scenario, Karen doesn't like it. Okay, so I'm just gonna, this is gonna go on. I have no sense letting the camera run. I've got a crease there I've got to deal with, a crease here, and I'm just gonna get as much of the resin troweled off as reasonable. But I don't want to disturb, I don't want to dig in and disturb that weave if I possibly can. Yeah, we'll come back to this in about I'll have another cup of coffee, another 15 minutes, and see how it's doing. You can see as this part is drying up, now it's getting sticky enough after about 20 minutes. It's turning a little bit flypapery that I can press down those little valleys. And it's got a, well, almost looks like a bicycle seat. Now I always find, and people know me well enough to know, you don't want to get ants in your pants. It's a good time. You need to kill that 45 minutes, take a nice coffee break. That always is a good way to ensure you don't disturb the part. It's got to sit there. Okay, after a nice coffee break, I can tell by looking in the resin when the resin starts getting like chewing gum, and we're coming up on that pretty soon. We'll be ready. And once that hardens up, then I want to put it up under a heating vent overnight, because that's, see, it's sticky enough now that it's sticking in the groove. It's sticking in the groove, and it's, as it's going around there, it's going to be very easy to get that to go around the groove. Once it starts to stick, the whole trick is you can't be impatient. Now at the 45-minute mark, I just pour whatever resin is left over and just trowel it on, let it fill the weave. As I get to the side, I'd like it to bend around just enough. I got to go into these areas and get it to stick down. I'm being super careful not to disturb the weave. Now this is going to have to dry overnight by a heating vent, but I'm not going to put it up by the heating vent until the resin starts to actually cure, that it's not, that I can't move it around like this. It goes through its curing stage. And I think when you look through the windshield and see this part, maybe this will look pretty cool. And if it doesn't, we have plenty of Bentley black. Now those kick pads, I'm thinking, those kick pads, they're going to require, I need to make patterns, I need to make some kind of, they have a little curve in them. So I'm thinking I may have to, and it'll be a good thing to show how to make a buck or a mold or whatever for that part. Or we're just going to redesign the part to our favor. That can happen. Now you can see this whole thing, at this point in the way this resin is laying down, it's going to just start to lay down. And just, I don't even have any pressure. It's the pressure of the trowel. And I'm just, now this is called, I call it babysitting. I've got to babysit. Another 15 minutes. This is going to be solid as a rock. And then I'll put it up by the heating vent. And tomorrow when I come back to this, I'm sure by now you're sick of looking at this video. And we try to send out a video every day, but yeah, we do have my son Craig coming to stay with us for a week, so may not be a lot of videos, or there'll be a lot. We'll make him make some carbon parts. He knows how to do this. Okay, I think that's just, we're just gonna, I don't want to get too carried away here. Just gonna let that sit until it's hard to the touch, and then put it up by the heating vent. And that'll probably be another 15 minutes to a half an hour. And because that resin is so clear, that's that clear resin. See, I know it's a lot more money than the regular resin. It's $207, and this is going to sit up by a heating vent. Tomorrow we'll put the real final finish on it. I hope that from this video or from other videos on our channel, we showed how to make those other parts out of carbon fiber right from scratch. Well, I hope this one adds to your knowledge base, because it is fun working with this material. It's relatively easy, and it allows you a lot of creativity as to what you can do or what you want to do if you want to make a custom motorcycle. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you're a subscriber, we'll see you tomorrow morning. And thanks for watching.